Hey everybody, welcome to Big Valley Living. I'm Michelle.
And I'm JJ.
Today, what are we going to can?
Looks like butternut squash time. These have been washed, so that's why they're wet. Just saying.
So our plan today is to can butternut squash. We're going to do 7 quarts because that's what fits in our All-American canner. What size is that one? A 915?
The 915, yeah. It'll fit 7-quart jars in there to can them under pressure.
So we have the jars all ready, and we have water on the stove that's getting ready to boil because that's part of the prep process. And first thing we're going to do is get these all peeled and cubed up. We'll see you in a minute. So we are following the directions in the USDA guide to home canning. And this recipe is found on actually 4-18, which is for pumpkin and winter squash. And then the times are on the next page. So they say that approximately 16 pounds of butternut squash is needed for 7 quarts. So
full disclosure, this is the first time that we've done this. That's why we're going by the guide. So
yeah.
Off we go.
Oh, that's kind of interesting. There we go. I'm going to stand up and drop something. So it's not really too...
And after looking at it, you're probably going to want to get down to the...
Do a couple of layers.
Part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know how well you can see that. But at the very top, it was sort of light, and we obviously want the oranger flesh, right? So we're going to go ahead and do that, and then JJ's going to cube it into the 1-inch cubes that it calls for in the instructions. So we've cleaned this out, and I just want you to see that we got all the little fibery things out, okay? I tried using a spoon. It really didn't work that well, see? So I ended up using this, it's a Pampered Chef thing, and it has like a melon baller on one end and a tomato core on the other. And it seems to be pretty sharp here, so if you have something like this tool, I'd recommend it. A spoon you can use, but a spoon will take you longer. Okay, here we are. So this is the last of the squash. They're supposed to be in approximately 1-inch cubes. So some are bigger, some are smaller. It smells super good. I'm going to leave that one.
Smells like pumpkin.
It does.
I mean, it smells exactly like pumpkin.
But it's a little drier than pumpkin, so it's easier to cut. I'd say that once we got the hang of the cutting and the seeding, that it worked well. What we're going to do next is go in and boil this. So this is how much we ended up getting. I can't quantify it in cups, but remember we started out with 17 pounds of butternut squash. We did take the, I'm going to call it part of the chimney off of one of them. It was a little, can you describe it?
It was kind of white. It had like white, and it wasn't very
dense.
Yeah, it was kind of mushy. So I wanted to get rid of that.
Yeah, so so we got rid of what, maybe about a pound out of the 17 that we ended up peeling. Probably. A couple of pro tips here for you. If you have never peeled butternut squash before, when I cut each end off, I could use the fatter end as like a handle. And you can see I just used my shirt to brace them, and it was clean. But then I did like a peel of the harder shell first around it, and then I went back and I cleaned it up. And we ended up with this just really nice orange, clean cut. So again, if you've never done this before, kind of learn from us, learn from our, errors. They weren't really errors, but...
Well, learn from us going through it.
That's why we're doing it for you here. Anyway, I'm going to set up the canning station while JJ sets up the camera, and we'll meet you in the kitchen. We're excited. This really smells good, you guys.
See you in a minute.
We have this pan of boiling water, Whenever you lift a lid and it's boiling, please lift it away from yourself so that you don't burn yourself. I'm just going to set it off to the side. It was just to keep us from getting too much evaporation while we waited for this canner to warm up. This is going to be what's called a hot pack for newer canners. So the jars are going to be hot, the product is going to be hot, and they're going to go into a hot pressure canner. These are quarts, so the USDA guidelines call for a 90-minute canning session. Pints would have been less, but since we're not doing them, we simply won't worry about it.
That's right.
You can
it would
consult
have been
your
55
guide.
minutes. Just looked at it.
But this is 90. So, taping you. Don't put it in there. There is no 5-second rule in this house.
For 2 minutes.
So JJ decided to add more. Now it's pretty much to the top, and the overlay doesn't mean as much as it did. You have anything to say for yourself, young man?
Yeah, I just want to get this done.
Yeah, me too. So again, as soon as this water comes up to a boil, we're going to set the timer for 2 minutes. And although we don't agree with making it mushy before you make it mushy in the canner, that's what it calls for.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. It's going to be under 10 pounds of pressure for an hour and a half.
We made potatoes a year ago, and we followed the guidelines, and there was just a lot of starch that settled to the bottom, and we followed the guidelines to a T. So it's one of those live and learn kind of moments. Okay, we've hit our 2-minute mark, and now we're going to remove it from the stove and start the canning process. Woohoo! If you've watched our other canning videos where we needed to add water, you will know that when we have to add water, we don't like to use the cooking liquid because that clouds it up, and we like pretty food on the shelves. I know we might lose a little bit of vitamin content, but I'm not too worried about that. So we have these, we have 2 of these actually, electric kettles. So I'm going to use a plastic funnel, and we have this cool slotted spoon. I want to make sure you can see this. Cool slotted spoon. We got this at the biggest little kitchen store in Amador County. And here we go. No salt, no nothing in this, okay? This is just prepared vegetables. Oh, come on, I've never done this with the 1-inch cubes before, so bear with me. You guys, it really does smell good. I can't say I've ever smelled anything exactly like it, but I can tell you that it's going to be versatile. You can almost tell already. So I'm going to jiggle it around a little bit. You can see there's room for a little bit more. And I'm going to be a little bit selective here and pack as many things as I can. This is also going to have a 1-inch headspace, which if you are new to canning, the 1-inch headspace mark when you're just giving it an eyeball is right where the body of the jar meets
the bottom ring.
The bottom ring, okay? So just as a heads up, that's what that looks like. Now, what I'm going to do I'm going to go ahead and fill another one that's closer to me. I don't want to touch these jars. Remember, they're super hot, and you don't want to burn yourself. We also have some really nifty tools that we have discovered throughout our relatively short canning career, if you will. And one of those, let's see if those look good. One of them, and this is especially for me because JJ uses a sort of an UV glove kind of a deal. Okay, just like you use in the barbecue. Anyway, so I like to use this little guy, and it just makes it so that as I'm handling the jars, I'm not going to burn myself. So I'm going to add the boiling water, or the very, very hot water, I should say, to that 1-inch space. And then what I'm going to do is take, now for chunkier things, I like to use a chopstick to debubble. There we go. See, and you can see some air bubbles coming up, and you can see the squash settling. So now I've just made actually a little bit more room, which is a good thing because we want to maximize our canning efforts, right? And JJ, do you think maybe a tiny one or leave it in there?
I'll just make sure it's all under.
I think I'm actually going to throw one
Or if you can pack
tiny
that down.
little slice there, okay? So at this point, like I said, you can get a little bit more selective. Now at this point, I'm not comfortable putting any more in here. I don't want it so tightly packed or anything that we have vegetables above the water line. So this looks good to me. And I'm going to do this, and then we're just going to kind of speed it up, okay? So as with any canning, you want to take and dip a towel or a clean rag in vinegar. Oops, don't do that. And you want to make sure that your rims are clean and free of debris. The reason you're doing that is that any piece of debris, any piece at all, can prevent a seal. So I took my clean lid that has been washed and cleaned in hot soapy water with my magnetic tool. And then fingertip tight. That's it. Okay, don't wrench it down. It does need room for things to escape. Oh my God, can you hold that up? You guys, this is so stinking pretty. Look at that. All right, we are going to finish the last 2 quarts. You know, the USDA guideline quantities are generally way more than you need, and true to form, this is the case again. We have other projects that we need to work on tonight, so we're going to take the squash that we've already cubed up, and we'll probably add another maybe 1 or 2 small ones depending on what we think when we're done with this load. And maybe tomorrow night or the next night we're just going to go ahead and can up the rest, and then whatever's left over that we don't can, we will roast and just have for dinner. Here we go.
I just want to get this thing going.
Okay, we have our 7 quarts in our All-American 915 canner.
So in the All-American canner, you go between 2 and 3 inches of water in here. I took it pretty close to the 3-inch because it's going to be going for 90 minutes. So I want to make sure we don't run out of water. And so we're pretty much at the full point of maximum for water in this canner. And here we'll go.
Make sure to follow the manufacturer's instructions on your
That's right.
canner.
Presto's a little different.
Yeah,
they're all a little
every
different.
Every canner is just a little bit different.
So
I'm going to back off.
So on the All-American, it has an arrow here, and then it has a little spot molded into the side here. So you want to line those guys up.
Hold on. There we go. That's a really good visualization.
Okay. And then try to make the lid as level as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you don't want to go too far one way or another, or too high on one side or another. Oh, there we go. And sometimes these will try to get up over, because there are 3 of them back in there, so you just want to make sure that they all end up underneath their tab there. And then, like always, across from each other and just make it to where they touch and then go to the next.
So we hit our 10-minute mark on the steam fully coming through the valve. And now JJ is going to put the weighted gauge at 10 pounds. There you go. Oh, there you go. Perfect. There you go. Now, we're going to wait for it to wiggle and a giggle. And that's going to take, what, maybe 10 minutes?
Yeah,
Keeping
10 minutes, somewhere in there.
Keeping the temperature at the same spot it's at.
This will start jiggling, and this other gauge, if you have an All-American, this will be up at about 11 pounds. So you can kind of watch and watch it as it's building up pressure inside the canner.
It's kind of like a two-way safety valve, if you want to think about it that way. It's pretty cool. So we'll see when it starts jiggling.
Rock it away. So we'll start to turn this down a little.
I'm going to focus real quick because we are at about 10.5 pounds of pressure, and that's what we were talking about earlier. So we kind of have those two safety valves. Okay.
So now I'll start the timer at 90 minutes, which is 1 hour and 30 minutes. And I'll actually start dialing this back. So I'll go from 8 to 7, and then I'll let that sit for a while to let that come down in temperature. And then if this keeps rocking and rolling and all that stuff, then I'll turn it down even more.
See how it just stopped for a moment? What we're aiming for is, what, 1 to 4 times per minute for it to wiggle?
I'd like it to do a few times a minute. I'd like it to
We
jiggle.
usually aim for like 2 to 3. That's our kind of standard around here. And we've had good luck with it, with little siphoning and other issues.
And I also like to kind of double check myself, make sure, because on a dial gauge, it needs to be 11 pounds. So I'll always double check myself, make sure that it's not too low on pressure.
Oh, we are at 11 pounds. I said 10.5 earlier.
Right, so 11 pounds. So that's why I kind of look at these.
So it's crucial that you just keep your eyes on it. Don't walk away and go outside and do any yard work, or, you know, if you want to have a phone conversation, just kind of stick around and watch it, because you don't want it to go steadily for a minute. That can be too much pressure, and you don't want to lose pressure. If you lose pressure, then you have to start the process all over again.
That's right.
And you will very likely lose quality in the end product that you can.
Well,
right? Especially at 90 minutes.
For example, this is going to go 90 minutes. Let's say at 45 minutes, this thing is not doing its shuffle here, and it's totally down, and you see it at 8 pounds. Well, then you have to build that back up, and you have to do it for 90 minutes.
And you're going to end up with mush.
That's totally mush. That's disgusting. So
at that point, you would have to just stop it. Because actually, we didn't bring this up. You cannot mash squash or anything and can it safely at home. Our home canners aren't designed for that. And that's why we do this in chunks. So if you decided that you wanted to make a soup or a mashed product after everything ends, that would be totally fine. You would just take it off the shelf and drain it and do whatever you want to do. But you cannot mash it and then can it.
So pressure can. Because you'll have salsas and all that kind of stuff and jellies and jams that are pretty darn mashed up, but you're going to water bath hem them. They're typically high in acid, all of those kind of things. But when you're pressure canning, no.
Yeah, this is a low acid food. This is the kind of thing that you buy cases of at Costco. So you really want to err on the side of caution when you're pressure canning. Salsas and everything in our house, we typically add citric acid.
Well, that's part of the recipes and stuff. But when you're doing a low acid food, you can't, because that heat has to penetrate into the middle of whatever you're canning.
The product.
And if it's all a puree and everything, that heat does not penetrate. So you need to have it where it's it's where that heat can get distributed and get into the middle of that piece. Wow, I got green hands. Where it can penetrate into the middle of that piece of food. That's why you can't puree and you can't do all of that stuff with a low acid food.
So it looks like we're kind of, I think you got the temperature pretty much dialed in, right? And you got to hear us talk about it. And you might probably in a few minutes, I know how this goes in our house, he'll probably drop it down to about 6.5 on our stove. Please understand, every stove and every canner and every house is different.
And depending on what time of year, because if I was doing this in October or December, oh, it is October. Well, now it's going to be different. Now it's going to be different than February or January or March.
Barometric pressure.
So pressures and temperature and all that stuff plays into
humidity, all of it. So this is why you need to stay attentive to this process. And it sounds like a lot, but you guys, when you can your own food and you go in and you open it up like, 4 months later or 6 months later or even a year, and it smells good and it's healthy and you can say, oh, what do I want to have tonight? There is really no feeling like that, is there? This is kind of our like 1 year, 2 month anniversary of pressure canning together. And we've gotten pretty adventurous in a way, like our tomato sauce and everything, and we've done simple things like green beans, and we're taking you along for the ride, but it's all about safety. At the end of the day, it is all about safety.
That's right. So we're doing pressure canning, and then the fermenting. We are both totally new to that. So doing a ton of research, and I won't eat anything that doesn't smell right, doesn't anything right. So you just, a lot of it's a little intuition. And, so like this is stopped, but it's still cranking. So
I'm glad we started to talk through this.
Yeah,
because
so this thing will, it's releasing pressure at this point. When it stops, it's building. So it's not going over 10 pounds. If this thing was rocking away, going boom, 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 it's over 10 pounds. And you can double check with that.
Now, you see that the gaps in time are getting like less and less than they were a few minutes ago. And this is usually the point where JJ takes it down about a half a notch. Because it's jiggling.
Well, I've already taken it down to almost 6.5 as we've been standing here.
So this is pretty much how it's going to look now for the next hour and 23 minutes.
It'll slow down a little bit, but
if we get less gaps, you see it's not banging away, but if we get less gaps in time between the wiggling, that's when we'll take it down probably another half a step. And then we'll just leave it and we'll hang out in the dining room and kitchen, and we're going to make dinner here pretty soon. So we'll be here the whole time with it, watching it. Well, we've gone the 90 minutes.
Yep, I didn't take it all the way down to 0 because that's just how I roll. I just want it to come off temperature kind of slowly. So I am probably going to do this now. So I'm going to take that off now because it's been about 5 minutes or so.
So what we do is we try and bring it in. We bring it off of the heat slowly so that there isn't any shock. And we've pretty much found that we don't get a lot of siphoning by slowly backing off of
because think about it. When things get hot, they get bigger, and as they cool down, they get smaller. So that's what you want to make that process as slow as possible, just to make it where it's not so expanded, being under pressure and all that stuff, and then come down to 0, like boom, and it just causes issues. Okay, so I let this come down to 0, and once it did that, and I set the timer for like every 10-15 minutes, so I don't know exact times,
It was about 40 minutes.
Yeah, so I let it get to 0. Then I took off the weighted gauge and let it sit for another 7 minutes. I just let this mellow out because
the weighted gauge, there was still like what, 1 pound or 2 pounds?
No, it was at 0. But when you take this off, it goes a bunch of steam. But this has been sitting for a little bit now, so it's time for it's showtime now.
It's time for the reveal.
It's showtime. So, Lord help me. Because this is really, I mean, it's kind of hot too, so. And then we're going to do this. I'm going to take a little bit here. So everything is off of there. So typically with this guy, it doesn't want to play nice.
We don't know why.
So I have the equalizer. It's so funny.
Come down to show everybody. There you go.
And just to, make it move. And sometimes I gotta.
And we have a 921 canner. Never does this.
No, never. It doesn't.
So it's just like canner to canner. They each have their own special little.
I'm just kind of moving that a little bit, just so that it'll move. There we go.
Ooh.
And then right there. So that's where we are. Set this for 5 minutes, and then we'll take this off, and we'll put those over on the counter, and then we wait. You don't want them, you don't want to go to bed and all this stuff, because then you get what's called stale sour.
Okay, yeah.
You get what's called a stale sour, because it's sitting in there, and that's not good either, because that's messed up.
So plan your can.
Plan your cans.
Well, that was a fun adventure, huh?
It was something.
Oh my gosh. This almost looks like the ripest cantaloupe, don't you think?
Yeah, it's crazy.
The color is so beautiful. So just remember that after you do your pressure canning, to let your canner come down to pressure on its own. Don't force it. You don't want to lose any water or have any siphoning. And make sure that the pressure is all the way at 0 before you lift the lid and prop it up to let the interior contents kind of settle down and cool down before you take them out. We left these on the counter with plenty of room between them for a day or two, really.
Yeah, and you want to let them sit at least, 12 to 24 hours before you mess with them. Mm-hmm. Just let them kind of mellow out, because it's been pretty hot for a while. So
yeah, and then we went ahead and we took the rings off. Always store with the rings off. Do not stack your jars in your pantry. That's all for safety rules. Take the rings off so that you don't get a false seal. And then we label ours, what it is and when we canned it. JJ's okay with the month and the year, and I like to put the date on it. I really don't know why, but I do. So, thanks for visiting Big Valley Living.
I mean, when it says, it's good for 18 months, well, okay.
I want to know the day.
1 or 2 days are going to make a difference. Come on.
True.
Anyway, thanks for visiting.
Make sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, please comment in the section below and we'll give us suggestions for what you'd like to see us can. I don't know that we're ready for meat yet, so please keep it to the vegetable and beans type of products. But we'll see what you say. And we'll try canning whatever everybody would like to see.
See you later, everybody.
Be kind. God, every